This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories.
And welcome to my review of I Jedi. And this is one of the most unique Star Wars novels where it actually goes over the events of a previous novel and retcons it from what I could see. I have not read the Jedi Academy trilogy. I do own it. I picked it up a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, at Half Price Books, but I just haven't really had a chance to read it since I'm in the middle of the new Jedi Order, and this was a lot easier to do since it was just released on Audible. But yeah, I really loved this novel. I think it was such a compelling story. It was really cool to get this more or less, cut down version of the Jedi Academy trilogy, which it looks like Corran doesn't appear in during the original ones from what I could see on Wikipedia, but I can't just say with 100% certainty. I can say with like 99%, but I will never really know until I eventually get to those books. But that's all probably going to be, like 6 to 8 months away. So going into this, I honestly, as I said, I really enjoyed this novel. It is really great story. The parts with the Jedi Academy trilogy was pretty interesting. Corran was pretty interesting to see while he was undercover in this, and just having a different name. But yeah, honestly, that was pretty cool, and I do want to see what the story was like originally because it sounds like it doesn't fit in super well with the Reds and Legends continuity, and this novel helps fix things out a bunch. It's also interesting to see that this is the only novel in Legends that is set from a first person perspective, although there'd be a bunch more that are done in modern canon, and this was nearly changed if the Disney buying Lucasfilm thing happened maybe a year later, because originally we were going to be getting a novel which was going to be set in Legends, being Heir to the Jedi, which was set in first person from Luke's perspective, which was supposed to be part of the Legends continuity, but it was pushed back to canon and was one of the first canon novels. After I think they changed a few things to take it out of Legends, although that novel still felt really well into Legends. That and Tarkin, since both were intended for Legends and were only brought over to canon because of the recent sale. But yeah, honestly, going back to this one, it really was just super crazy to see everything that happened in it because this novel just goes so deeply into Jedi lore and everything about the dark side. I feel like there's so many questions that I see online where people are talking about how the Jedi should use the Force, difference between light and dark, and even thing I see discussed a lot about how the Jedi are selfless and the Sith are selfish. And I never even knew where that came from, but it, from what I could tell, comes from this novel. And as I said, it is just a really interesting novel because it is so well written. It is an extremely compelling story, and even if they didn't include the stuff from the Jedi Academy story, they would have had a really solid story. Let's just say that Corran was there for the entire Jedi Academy trilogy, and they didn't have to do these retcons. I still think the story would have been great because even outside of that, we get to see this extraordinarily compelling story where he's trying to go and save his wife, which serves as the main plot to the story and why he goes to the Jedi Academy, so he can learn to become a Jedi to save his wife. And he has his disagreements with Luke, especially after everything with them fighting the ghost of Exar Kun. I think that, especially with me first learning of Exar Kun through the Knights of the Old Republic games, it is pretty cool to see how he was originated here and retroactively worked into the Knights of the Republic timeline. I'm I'm not sure which every version had, but I did have the mobile version of the game, which included the Yavin map, where you could go to Yavin 4's satellite station, and there you can learn a little bit about Coon, but you never get down to the planet because obviously he will be taken out later. There was, of course, another interesting retcon like this, where the Valley of the Jedi from the Jedi Academy series, or the Jedi Knight series, sorry, not Jedi Academy, I'm thinking of the last game. But the Jedi Knight series is retconned to be where the final battle between the Jedi and Sith took place, where Darth Vader's thought bomb is used to wipe out the Brotherhood of Darkness and wipe out a good amount of the Jedi. So it is cool when they're able to take things that are in older stories and bring them into the older public to be able to do that, but I feel like that's kind of a different thing to talk about, although it is cool, and I Jedi, as I said, was a really great novel. I enjoyed it the entire time and even pushed off starting the new Jedi Order book because I just really loved this book so much. I wanted to finish it as fast as possible, and since it was long since, well, it covered the entire events of a novel trilogy plus its own story, made it pretty long. Probably not as long as Star by Star or the Thrawn duology books, but still, it is pretty long and was just a really dark and interesting story at some points where I think it gets to its best where it goes to its own original story, where it does have a few other crossovers to other stories, specifically the story where Lando and Mara go and look for a character that would become a little more important later on in Timothy Zahn's stories, which is the character of George Cardass. And from what I can tell, is this story wasn't really well told out and was only referenced, I think, in one other book, but that was only from a quick search, so I can't fully tell if that is what fully happened or if there was a longer story because I don't really have the time to go and fully research it. But still, it is pretty interesting, and it's a little point, which is why I don't want to also fully research it. It's just something I wanted to note. And yeah, going into the rest of it, it was an incredible story where Cora got to visit his grandfather, well, more adopted grandfather, since his true grandfather was a Jedi Knight who was killed, and it was pretty interesting to be able to see him go and reconnect with his roots. And it was a really nice section of the book where it was very well written, and you definitely feel the emotion between the characters who haven't seen each other for such a long time, but clearly have a great amount of respect for each other. And it's really cool to see Corin connecting to his grandfather in a different way, where you finally get to saw him more as an equal and not as either a grandfather or a superior, since they both served in Coruscant. And just continuing through this, the best part was probably when he was undercover and had to be making decisions which could compromise his morality, and he started to slip more and more until he was willing to do some things that would be pretty bad, which would essentially have been cheating on his wife to go and try and save her. But another great thing that ties into later novels and helps to understand the greater context is death in the New Jedi Order is when he meets Eligos the Kamasi, and it was really cool to see his character here. I felt like it really tied into the Thrawn duology, where that is a very major plot point. And it also helps explain how they were such close friends, but also how he wanted to avenge his friend's death when he challenged the Vong for control over Ithor in a battle. And as I said, this was probably the most interesting part where he's realizing what the dark side truly is and how someone could fall to it, and eventually realize that he needs to become a selfless person and can't be thinking these selfish ways. He can't be taking the easy path and has to take the harder path where he goes on this awesome undercover spree as a Jedi who is kind of like haunting the criminals to avenge their victims. That was a really great part of the story, and I really enjoyed that. But it gets even more interesting when it continues and the story just keeps getting better and better. We eventually reach a point towards the end where he is confronted by a bunch of who he thinks are dark Jedi, and all they turn out to be a group of slightly changed Jedi. It is really interesting as he's about to, think he's dead, but he is rescued by Luke, which, although it was a little predictable, was cool, and they go to save his wife Mirax and ultimately push off the Imperial warlord slash pirate to be dealt with. It was probably a Rogue Squadron novel since she wasn't defeated here, but still, it was just really interesting. I really love this. I think that the best part of it, as I said before, is the look into Jedi philosophy and how the Force works and everything. It was super compelling and was just a really great story. This was probably one of my favorite Star Wars Legends novels because it is just so well written. It is such a great story, and it was covering just so much, but managed to cover it all really well. As I said, I really enjoyed this. I think that Michael A. Stackwell did his best work here, and from what I saw was this is Stackwell's favorite novel he wrote, and I totally agree with it. It is an incredible story. Corran Horn is such an interesting character in this, as we get to see really firsthand what it's like to train and become a Jedi, and that from a person who didn't start as a young kid or when they were 19 and still didn't know too much about the world. He was an older, more experienced person who has done a lot and would be most of the audience. Although they may not have had the military service he did, they would have had a good amount of life experience and would have been able to see everything through his eyes and just see stuff in such an interesting and unique perspective. I honestly really loved this novel, as I said, and highly recommend checking it out. But yeah, honestly, this is like definitely up there. As I said, in my ranking, I would definitely say Plagueis is above it, as is the Thrawn trilogy and probably the Bane trilogy. But I would say it's still pretty high up there. I feel like, just off the top of my head, it would probably go after the Bane trilogy, but there might be something that I'm not really thinking of right now because I don't have a list of Legends novels pulled up, and they're all really great. There might be some of Timothy Zahn that I still really enjoyed that I'm not thinking of. And Star by Star was still a really great book, but I definitely think that'd be below this because honestly, this was, as I said, an amazing novel. I really enjoyed it and highly recommend it. It is such a great story, and they did such an incredible job with making it. And I think Michael Isaak, as I said, did a great job with this. And this is definitely my favorite novel from him. But I want to know what you think. Please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories.
Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.